Welcome to Draft Sickos on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast feed. This is the show where we discuss everybody from the biggest of names to the deepest of sleepers. I'm joined as always by the real star of the show, Stephen Gillespie. Stephen, how are you doing tonight?
Maxwell, I'm awesome. I don't want to bury the lead, though, because we have an incredible
right.
guest on. I don't want to waste time on me.
Let's do it. We've also got with us Keith Smith. He is a contributing writer for Spotrac. He is part of the NBA Front Office Show, which is a must-listen. And he is also now part of Sports Business Classroom, where you can prepare yourself for a potential career in the sports world. It is Keith Smith. Keith, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for all those kind words. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, we were excited to have you back on. We got to have you on last year. It was a blast. We wanted to get you back on this year, and I know that you were communicating with Stephen. And the whole thing that we love over at this show is sleepers. And Stephen was like, "Yeah, I'll ask him for some under the radar guys that he likes." And you said over this like mastery.
I went a little,
and I was like, "Oh man!" Like we were excited before. And now we're even more excited.
My exact words to Maxwell is like, "Oh no, Keith is in full-blown draft sicko mode right now. This is incredible."
Yeah, I was thrilled. How are you managing to balance all this with free agency upcoming? Obviously, the playoffs are happening, but with all the different things that you cover, how have you managed to get so much draft stuff in this year? Is it something that you're really enjoying, or are you just kind of like bring the candle at both ends to the extreme right now?
Yeah, my general answer when anybody asks me like, "How do you do all this?" is very poorly. I have a little social life. I don't do anything, but the real answer is like basketball is my favorite thing in the world. So if you ask anybody in my life, like, what is he doing if like I'm not like around and like some sort of basketball, like I'm watching something, I'm reading something, I'm breaking something down, or I'm writing myself or recording. And I really do like, it's my favorite thing to do outside of, stuff with my family, which I do still, see them in like August and September. But it's okay. But no, and the other part is too, something that I really have I gotten better at. I still don't want to say I'm very good at. I'm extremely intentional with my time. Now, so what I do each day is I sit down and kind of go through my day on what is it I need to accomplish today? What is it I would like to accomplish today? And then what are the extras? And then because I know myself, if I don't build in downtime to do other things, I'm going to get like, I'll burn out and I'll find myself not enjoying the process and those sorts of things. So I build in a little bit of downtime into each day as well, where like, that's my like goof off time. And I know that sounds ridiculous to say I'm scheduling my goof off time, but it just helps me stay on top of everything I need to do. And that I think has really helped. And then I told Stephen this, I was very familiar with a lot of the guys in this draft class because of how many Montverde Academy players are in this draft. And the teams they had played over the years, I saw those guys up close and personal. It's literally like 25 minutes from my house. So like I saw those guys. So I didn't need to spend a lot of time on those guys. I did check in, obviously, to see how we're doing at the college level and the like. But I got to see them and throughout the course of their high school career, see them play against some other guys. So I came in better prepared for this draft than I think I ever have before.
It's incredible to see the amount of work that you've done. I've listened to the Front Office Show religiously. I've talked to, a mutual friend of ours, Bryce Simon. And when I had mentioned that we were going to have you on, he's like, "Yeah, dude, like I've been talking to Keith about draft stuff." And he's as far in it as he's been since he's known you. So I think it's incredible that you're doing that, Keith. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on, obviously, was to talk about draft people. But I think it would be like a waste of your talent and knowledge if we didn't at least ask you like some NBA related questions too, that do tie into the draft world too. Like a lot of our listeners obviously love the NBA. And one of the things this year that we've noticed is like NIL has obviously had a huge impact on the way that even players assess whether or not they want to go into the NBA. Like we saw Boogie Flan check in for a hot minute. Like he did the Grandpa Simpson, like walk in, take his hat and jacket off and then put him back on and walk out. And a lot of that has to do with just how much money he knew that he could make and where his draft stock was going to be. So one question that I wanted to ask you in particular, Keith, was that with players going to the NIL, do you see the NBA potentially like revisiting like rookie scale contracts and things like that to bring more talent in? Or do you think they're more so just kind of happy with the way this year broke out?
It's a really interesting question from the contractual standpoint. I think right now they're pretty happy with the way things are. When it comes down to it, they don't. This sounds so harsh to put it this way. The NBA doesn't care if 300 kids apply to the draft, right, as early candidates, and they can only take 60 of them in a normal year when teams aren't forfeiting picks, which feels like is like now an every year thing that we have this 59 player draft. But the reason why they don't care is because a lot of NBA teams are right. And I say this is like, full disclosure, I don't really enjoy watching college basketball all that much. Like I'm such an NBA snob, and I know myself enough to admit that like I just struggle with it a little. But related to that, the NBA, like the people in the NBA, they're like NBA snobs to like a whole different degree. So they would rather have these kids developing even in the G League somewhere, if they can kind of have their hands on them. They didn't love the G League Ignite program because it felt like it was too removed. But if they're in their own G League system, they'd love to plug it with guys who should be a bunch of sophomores and juniors in college. So there's that part of it why I think they don't necessarily mind if kids come out. But I do think what you've seen really we're about year 2 into this process is there's been a full-on change in mindset with the NBA towards a couple things. One, as teams deal with these apron issues and they become more expensive, they need to find really cheap contributors, especially if they're contenders. You're starting to see some teams, the 22, 23, 24-year-old prospects that they might have turned their noses up at the past, they're starting to say, I might be interested in this kid. So they don't mind if they stay in school an extra year or two, get another year of seasoning, and then come out as an older prospect, because then they're generally a little more ready to step in and play right away. And if you're a more expensive team and an apron team, you need that kind of contribution right out of the gate from some of those guys. So you've got that part of it. And then whenever you talk to anybody around it, everybody is thrilled that these kids have a chance to make money now, because it's just better for everybody there. The NBA didn't love, or when I say the NBA, I'm talking everyone, NBA, not the league itself. To be very clear. Folks around the NBA didn't love when kids were like, I'm running off to Australia, or I'm running off to play in Lithuania, or I'm going to go I'm going way back, but like Brandon Jennings is going to spend a year in Italy, because a lot of times what was happening to those guys is they're getting buried and they're not even actually playing, because these European coaches, and no disrespect meant, but are like, not playing some 18-year-old kid from the United States just to help him boost his draft stock to leave us in a year, right? Like, if he's the best player, I'll play him, but rarely is an 18-year-old the best player to step in. So I think you that's a very long way of answering. I don't know that they're going to change anything right out of the gate. It would take until we get to the next CBA too, before they can change that. And you might have a little bit of a push from the union side on, hey, we're like, let's try to get these kids a little more money, because if it does get, like we all heard with Cooper Flagg, $20 million or whatever, but that's an outlier. That's an extreme. If it starts turning into every kid's making $10 million a year, all of a sudden first round rookie deals that pay $4 million in year 1 aren't going to look so good. So you might see a little bit of a rebalance there, but those rookie scale deals keep going up because they rise by the same amount as the cap. So, I don't know that we're in a spot where anybody feels a huge need to change it.
Yeah, and I think from the NBA standpoint, it makes sense that you kind of want, I guess, more ready-made players in general coming into the league, guys that have had to mature a little bit, had to deal with their own money a little bit now in a way too. One thing I'm curious about from that financial perspective is, and we talked about this last year with the collective bargaining situation kind of being what it is now, where money's a lot tighter. And if you can hit on a late pick, it means a lot more. And if you miss on a late pick, it might mean a little bit more. Last year, we saw, I think, around like 45-ish guaranteed contracts issued between the first round and guys that got guarantees in the second. with the thin nature of this class and the collective bargaining agreement being what it is, do you have any sort of like insight or at least gut feeling as far as like, are we going to see just way more guys get two ways in the second round, or do you think teams will still kind of talk themselves into guys?
I think you'll still see it balance out by the time we hit about the 40 to 45th pick. So, midway, a third of the way into the second round, that becomes two-way territory. But you are going to have a couple teams with later second round picks that may need to do similar-ish to what we saw last year, where it becomes, all right, we're dealing with second apron issues. We got to sign this guy to a second round pick exception because we can. And it actually helps us a little more. So like Phoenix has a fairly late second round pick. You may see them actually use that on a standard contract player versus just, hey, most other teams are using it on two-way guys just because they may need to do that just to be a way to fill out their roster without causing themselves all kinds of issues. The other thing with that too is that can help with like hard caps and the like, especially if you're up against it there. We saw the Knicks put themselves in a weird spot with their sequence of transactions. They had to wait a long time that ultimately resulted in Ariel Huck-Porty being on a two-way and then getting converted early and those kind of things. So I think we're probably more likely to see it run the way it has run for the last few seasons, but I do think there is more consideration going into that. I do think teams are going to be even more aggressive with, are you willing to take a two-way? Great, we'll draft you in the 40s, in 50s in the draft, because I think they're seeing that as, even if we start you on a two-way, or that's the intention, we don't necessarily have to go that way, because that's one of the things with the NBA, with the draft being before free agency. If you run into a spot where it's like, oh man, we ran ourselves into a hard cap and now we're tighter to the apron or whatever, you may then want to turn that around and say, all right, hey, I know we thought, player X, you were going to be on a two-way. Now we're going to sign you to a standard deal instead, using a second round pick exception, have you at, the just over $1 million on the rookie minimum. And we kind of go forward from there.
That's good stuff. All right. So Keith, I think we'll steer away a little bit now from like the NBA financial interest that you're just one of the best, if not the best, at least that I listen to in terms of that knowledge on there. But let's kind of turn our attention now to the NBA playoffs. We've been asking a lot of our guests recently, like, how much has the playoff experience that we've seen so far, like the way that the games are played, we've seen depth, we've seen more physicality and stuff like that. Does that influence the way that you evaluate these NBA prospects like that are coming in? Like, how do you look at the playoffs and then evaluate these prospects?
Yeah, a little bit. I think there's always been a sense of, especially at the very top of the draft, could we throw this kid into the finals right now in the Pacers Thunder, and how would he hold up, or how would he hold up within a couple years? What's that gonna look like? That's always been a little bit of a measure. But I think what we've seen really in these playoffs particularly is the amount of physicality and ball pressure. I think that's gonna have guys who can kind of get themselves out of a tough spot a little easier. It doesn't mean they need to be a ball handling whiz, but they're quick to make the next read. They get off the ball, very fast, and they're able to process and make decisions and see that pressure coming. I think those guys are going to have a little bit more value to teams, just simply because that's something I think you need to be able to do now at a even higher rate. I think we've seen everything has trended over the years, and I think we're now kind of almost hitting like maximum on this is shooting. If you can't shoot, you better be elite at least a couple other things. And if you're not, like, good luck. You might be a bench guy and maybe you could play a role, but you better be able to shoot. And when I say shoot too, that doesn't necessarily mean be able to shoot 3-pointers, but at least be able to, if you're a big, catch it from 15, and if they drop, you can at least knock that in or do something with it from there. So those are, I think, the skills we really see. And the last one I'll say is you need to be able to defend your position and be able to hold up one position up or one position down. Obviously, if you're a center or point guard, it's only one direction, but you just need to be able to hold up on a switch until help can come or they can scramble you out of it. Because if you're a complete zero on that end of the floor, you're going to have a hard time. You better be the best offensive player in the class by far and able to make up for it because teams and coaches don't have a lot of patience for the old. Well, he'll give up 25, but he'll get you 30. So you're still +5. We're okay. That ship has kind of sailed a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think that's all spot on and really interesting. What do you think about this class sort of holistically? And like, is there anything that you really like about this class or anything that you'd be like, oh man, this is a bad draft if you need blank?
Yeah, that's a good question. Holistically, I was really fired up coming in, probably more so than I probably should have been. I think again, I saw so many of these kids at the high school level and get super attached to a lot of them and was really excited. And then it kind of went I don't want to say sideways, but it didn't go to the extreme level of good that we hoped it would in college for some of these guys. And I do feel like this draft is a little light on international guys, especially like impact immediate international guys, where it felt like for so many years we had trended towards like, man, like feels like we're going to have half the first round be international players. Feels like this year that's slid back a little bit. There's still some very good players who I think are going to be really good NBA guys, but it's just not. This is more like the drafts I grew up with, where it's like a couple are sprinkled in here and there. So that's kind of the holistic thought. And then I think it's funny if you need how do I phrase this? If you need a starting center who can start for you in year 1 or 2, you might be in a little bit of trouble in this draft. But if you need a guy who could come in and be a backup for a couple years, development, I think you're going to be really strong. I think there's a ton of guys who can play that it might take them a couple years to get there at the NBA game. But if you need it day one, there might only be like 2 or 3 guys that I'm ready to say day one, they start and off we go. It might take a little bit of time, but the other positions, I think, I don't know that it's super deep on true point guards either, but I think that's a position that's just in general kind of going away. Like it doesn't like, right. And I apologize to keep bringing it back to the NBA, but
that's the whole point of this, though. You know what I mean? Like this is you want to draft guys that can play in the NBA and be effective in the NBA. Right? So no, like that's we're big on that. So don't feel bad bringing it back to the NBA. We're not
drafting for EuroLeague here. At least they were a couple years away, maybe from doing that.
Who knows?
But I think we always say, right, and it's so funny because the guy who comes up when it's like that team needs a true point guard, somebody who could do that. They need a Chris Paul type. The dude's been in the league for 20 years. Like, he can't still be the standard bearer for what we're looking for. Otherwise, like, boy, we've done a really poor job like developing. So now I think that'll transition to like, we need a Halliburton type. But even Halliburton he can be a true point guard. And we've seen at times where he is like, I'm just going to play distributor tonight. I'm going to, make sure everybody's where they need to be. And I'm not going to shoot very often, but he can take over games with his shot too. That's the other piece. I don't know that I think a lot more of these guys, even the smaller guards, feel like they're score first versus being playmakers. That's why I'm a little higher on like a guy like Kasparas Jakushonas, because I think with him, like that does feel like if you really need a true playmaker, it feels like he might be that. And then there's like guys later in the draft that I'm kind of higher on, but it's probably going to take a while for those guys because point guards almost always take a little bit to really figure out the NBA.
So what I didn't have this in my note, Keith. So you're gonna we're gonna put you on your toes here. One thing that we're hearing a lot about is 1 and 2 big man lineups, particularly now in the playoffs with the Thunder. We know that they adjusted their starting lineup against the Pacers very recently. How is that impacting like your positional scarcity, so to speak, right? Like you mentioned that there are a lot of backup bigs, but there's a lot of teams now that are employing 3-4 big man rotations right now. With that being the case, how do you think the board could fall, like with people looking at like, okay, maybe Jakushonas is like the only true organizer within this class, and I might be okay with drafting a Johni Broome or a Maxime Reynaud later on in the first round. Like how do you evaluate for positional scarcity when you're ranking your prospects?
Yeah, it still is important. The higher you are, the less fit matters to me, right? If you're in the top 10-ish unless you're like, if Oklahoma City had landed that top 10 pick, by all means, draft for fit, because I don't even know what the hell you need. Right. I apologize for, but like, I don't even know. Like, I can't even explain what your thing is. So just pick whoever, like, to an extent. Or if you're like, what we really needed was just somebody who can block some shots. Okay, I can go get the best shot blocker in the draft, I guess. It's probably not going to matter much for them. But I think when you, like, the bigs are a perfect example to me. And I think teams playing multiple bigs, NBA big men have never, ever, ever been asked to do more. Right. They have to now step out to 30, sometimes even 40 feet away. Like, look at where just in these finals, Halliburton will pull up from 35 and 40 feet and let it fly. And we all know, like, Trae Young and Steph and the guys who are really good at it. But even like a guy like Peyton Pritchard, right? He wants to shoot.
Yep.
Then if you flip to the other end, Kristaps Porzingis has some of the deepest shot metrics in the entire NBA. And if you're a big, you guys know, I used to cover the Celtics. I grew up a Celtics fan. So I still watch all their games. So you can see a number of times every game where a big comes out and he's like, all right, pick and pop. We didn't switch it, hedge recover. He recovers back 2 steps and he's still 3 steps away from where Porzingis popped to. So that's a long way around for me to say bigs have more need for them than I think we've seen in a number of years. We kind of went through our whole small ball revolution, and there's still a place for small ball. Don't get me wrong. But what you need with bigs in the NBA now is you need a lot of them because they tend to just wear out. They tend to get tired. They miss games. They struggle because they're asked to do so much now. So what ends up happening is you end up in a position where it is you need 3 or 4 of them to get through the season. And I know we all love to, and we did it, and I'm there. We need to plan for the playoffs, but there's still 82 other games to get through too, right? So you have to plan to get through, especially if you want your top 2 bigs to be ready for the playoffs. You need the other guys to maybe get you through games 1 through 82. And that's where I think you're starting to see kind of a little bit of a change there. And then there's still certain skill sets that are all like, and I think we're going to talk about a guy tonight. Shooting can get you drafted now, right? If even if all you can do is shoot at an elite level, teams are gonna say, all right, we're at least kind of interested, right? Like, but we'll find a way. You can't be a complete zero in all other phases, but if you're an elite shooter, we'll find a way to get you on the floor, at least in the regular season.
Well, I think even just looking this past year, like Jamison Battle and Brand Carlson were like the 2 big like margins wins, as far as like these are guys that a lot of people didn't really pay much attention to at all, but they can both really shoot it relative to their position.
Yeah.
And it's just easy to play a guy like that. Even if they're not the most perfect, well-rounded player, it's like, well, that guy can get you 12 minutes and survive. In Carlson's case, if you can, jump a little bit. In Battle's case, if you're bulky, like whatever your little physical advantages that you can pair with that, as long as you just like know how to play basketball enough and can really shoot, you can get on the floor.
Well, that's where I'll like shout out, like, obviously he's my guy because we went to my school, but Quentin Post.
Post.
We
love this. This is a Quentin Post program right here.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And he was on my guys list last year. There might have been some BC ties in there. I'm not going to lie, but like, I just like the fact that he can step out and shoot it, and he can hold. Yeah, he's not switching on to Anthony Edwards and shutting him down on the perimeter. That we actually even saw how that went, and it didn't go well.
Yes.
But he can hold up if he's allowed to be in the paint and do his things because he is physical and he can hold up. Like, yeah, guys like that, like, yeah, you need to be able to do at least something else. Okay. But yeah, shooting will get you on, get you drafted, get you on the roster, and get you on the floor more often than it won't.
For sure. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to start to get into Keith's guys. I'm super excited for him. We're going to lead off with one of the guys at the top of the draft, who Steven and I feel like are like starting to split apart on. As we always talk about, this is a show where we disagree with each other, which is fun.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off with
like an old married couple.
Exactly. Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, Keith, the first player that we're going to talk about, and we're going to do a little more background than normal. We always preface at this time of year. We got a lot of people that are just dropping in, might not be paying attention to the draft year round. Our viewership, listeners, all that really spike around this time of year. So I apologize to people who've been here all year. First guy we're going to lead off with is VJ Edgecombe. He is a switchblade guard out of Baylor, 6'4", 6'7.5" wingspan, 193 pounds. On the year, averaged 15 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists, 2.1 steals, 0.6 blocks, 43.6% from the field, 34% from three, 78.2% at the free throw line. Really interesting, well-rounded, super athletic guard. Keith, he's considered top 5, but what makes him your guy of the players in the top?
Yeah, in general, I tried to stay away from like the high end players because they're gonna go where they go. I personally, I don't think he should drop below 4. Yeah, you can even make a case that he should go at 3. In this draft, I'm not gonna get crazy. I wouldn't put him on for what it's worth. I have Flagg and Harper, like 99% of the known world does at 1 and 2. But what really if you just evaluate VJ Edgecombe off what he did at Baylor, you might come away with like, it's okay. Like it was okay. And it's a small sample size, so I don't want to get crazy about it. But what he did in the Olympic qualifiers for the Bahamas, playing on a team with other NBA players, a high level basketball, because there were other good teams in those qualifiers, he was awesome. And when
good players on his team too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this was not just him running around gunning because he's the only NBA level guy on his team. Like he was out there with Buddy Hield and DeAndre Ayton and other guys where it's like, all right, he had to actually earn his place with that team. And he was so good on both ends of the floor, and nothing looked too big for him. And is it the NBA? No, but there are a lot of NBA guys in those Olympic qualifiers. And that's what I keep going back to is big, important games. And he was awesome. Baylor was really messy this year. Like not there. They've been kind of I would say like they're not the traditional blue blood program, but like I think like knocking on the door of breaking into that group at times over the last decade or so. But I feel like now we're in a spot where this was a down year for them. They never really came together. I personally think throw another Montverde kid out there, but it took them way too long to get to Robert Wright as the point guard. Because like by the time they did, then the season kind of started to go the right, no pun intended, but the right way. But it took him so long to get to him that now he's leaving, right? Now he's going to BYU. Where people are going to tune in to BYU for AJ DeBonta, and they're going to be like, "Oh, this kid's actually pretty good. This little guard's really tough." But anyway,
and just to cut you off on Rob Wright too, like I think one of the interesting things with him was like he was the guy who felt the most mature, poised, and organized on the floor, and that to me was like when the oh crap alarm went off with Baylor this year, when it's just like, oh no, we got to get that 18-year-old point guard out on the floor right now to get this team under control. Like it did take him way too long.
To go back to Edgecombe though.
Yeah.
I think he's ready defensively he'll have a learning curve to put in, and I won't repeat that on every single player, but every guy who comes into the NBA does. So if he's not like an all defense level guy year one, like don't go crazy. I think people are getting a little too excited because we had like a string of guys who were really good defensively. We had Herb Jones and we had the Thompson twins shortly there. And it was like, we all got fired. Oh my God, look at all these defenders. Like it's most guys, like that's 3 dudes out of hundreds that have come into the league. Like we need to give these guys a bit, but I think he's ready. Athletically, I think he's fine. I wanted to see him do a little bit more on ball at Baylor and a little better on ball. I thought at times he was almost too passive and was too quick to get off the ball and keep it moving. And I don't know if that was a schematic thing. I don't know if that was a him thing. Like I'm not sure where that was, but I think he's going to be an NBA starting off guard who can swing over to some secondary creation stuff. I don't think he'll ever be a point guard. I don't think he's going to be able to really run your offense. But what you could do is you could put him out there with like a guy who's big enough to defend another position, but is your primary on-ball guy. So Luka, for example, who is your point guard offensively, but let Edgecombe defend point guards. I think he'll be fine holding up against any point guards in the league. I'm really, really high on him. why I threw him on the list even to you guys was it feels like as we've got deeper into this prep, he's just started to drop for some folks.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. Like I haven't seen anybody be like, he's not even a top 10 pick. But like I was listening to a podcast the other day that was like, I don't know. I don't think he's anything more than a backup in the NBA, and I just can't get there.
Yeah, I just think there is so much value to this archetype of player. And I feel like if we look at guys like if we're going super high end, the one that I feel like you hear a lot with him is like Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo is one you hear a lot. Like there's, like a Derek White, but even like the Quentin Grimes, like Jalen Suggs, like Christian Brown type outcomes for him. A guy like Caruso is a lot like physically thicker and stronger, but even a guy like Cason Wallace, like I feel like these types of players just are always on good teams. And that's like the thing that I just can't get away from it. It like the 3 spot on my board with Edgecombe is like, I've got a lot of questions about a lot of these guys. And it's like, this is just one of the player types that is always on good teams. And it's, yes, he is going to need some of those accommodations because his ball handling isn't the best. He has a really hard time with his offhand. The finishing is rough, which like I've always kind of hand waved because it's not uncommon for really bouncy guys to struggle as finishers pre-draft, which is like a weird thing. I don't think a lot of people like know or pay attention to. It's not
very counterintuitive. Yeah.
Yes. It's not what you would expect.
Where Gabe, if I can jump in,
go
where
for
it does stand out as good is in the open floor when he's in transition. I think in college, especially with the way just teams pack the paint, it can be, like you said, it can be really hard for really athletic guys to get inside and finish. That's why when somebody does it with these, like, oh man, holy crap, like he can do it. Like that's going to be up there. When it's other guys where I'm like, all right, I think it'll be okay. I just think that's one of the difference between the NBA and college basketball is just the floor is a lot more open. And I think he'll be really good in that sense.
Totally.
Yeah. So
good standstill decision maker, gets a lot of steals and blocks. Excellent rebounder for a guard. Like he just has all these traits in a winning player that I get. Yeah, in a normal draft, quote unquote. Like, is this what you want at 3? Maybe not, but like I just feel like he's one of
You're
the
mocking
best
me like right here, Maxwell.
No, it's true. It's true.
And so Maxwell Keith pointed out earlier that he and I think a late night text that I sent him the other day was like, I get that he's safe, right? And I love VJ, and I'm by no means am I advocating that he shouldn't be top 5, but we got other prospects in this kind of same grouping, like an Ace Bailey, who again has questions. Con Knipple again has questions. Trey Johnson again has questions. I don't know if he's incredibly valuable, and like just to kind of spoil this now, I'm actually working on a piece projecting his offense into the NBA right now. It'll be out next week for our site. I'm skeptical on how effective he's going to be on the offensive end, but I know that he's going to be useful. He has a lot of utility. I'm just curious, like Maxwell, was like, do you draft this guy number 3 overall? Like, I think that's a legit question to ask because he doesn't have the ceiling that you want, but he is in theory like a very safe player because the rebounding is a very great indicator. Maxwell and I always talk about this. Rebounding is a fantastic indicator for pro potential. What do you think about his ceiling up or upside, like as a star player potentially in the NBA?
Yeah, that's a little bit of the challenge, right? If we're 10 years from now, well, let's hope we can all regroup then and break it down. I think there's a better chance Ace Bailey is like a multi-time all-star and like we're like, oh man, how did he fall to 4 or whatever? I think with Edgecombe, there is the floor is very high, but I don't know how high the ceiling is. Like, I think he's super tight in that window. I don't think he's done developing by any means.
No.
He'll get better at a lot of other things. Especially I think his shot mix and shot variety, I think will really improve as he ages and grows into himself a little bit more confident with the ball, to do some things. But I feel very safe that defensively, athletically, you could probably plug him into a rotation today and feel pretty good about that. Where a couple of guys behind him, it might take a little longer for those guys. When I think about I had said earlier at the top of the draft, I don't think about fit all that much. I do think it's a little with Philly.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to factor in fit a little bit because you have Quentin Grimes, who was probably the best thing of their season this year, out, but at least post Jared McCain getting hurt. And if you have Maxey, McCain, and Grimes, there's your 3-guard rotation. I don't know that I want another guard in that mix. It sounds great until you can't play them all. Then it gets a little weird, a little wonky, and it gets a little off. That's where I think maybe they go Bailey, because I think there's a easier path to minutes for Ace Bailey. I also, again, one of my guys from last year, I love Justin Edwards, and I feel very vindicated with how well he played as a rookie, that I don't know that the path for Bailey is super clean to minutes, unless it's, well, we drafted him third, we have to play him over this guy who was a two-way conversion. But yeah, it's just a little odd there with the team that's there. But if you take the teams out of the mix, I'm not going to jump up and down at anybody who has Bailey over him. I know then some people I've seen, it sounds like maybe that's where you are, Steven, is dropping him kind of into that next tier of guys, where then it kind of, a lot in the tiers becomes, it's a lot of it's personal preference, I think, at that point. But I'm not going to yell and scream. I just feel very confident that he will be at least a good NBA player. I don't know that he ever reaches superstar status.
And that's, I think, totally fair. And to kind of answer the tier question, the problem is with this class, like what Maxwell is saying, with like normally, like, is this a player you want? There's just like a glut of players, I would say, from like 3 through possibly 7. I'm more of like that 5 and 6 range right now myself, but there's just, you could make a clean argument for a number of different players. So I think that's all fair, but we can move on to the next guy that you have on here. And you tugged on my heartstrings with this one that we're going to talk about, but Johni Broome from Auburn, the big man who measured 6'9.5" without shoes, almost 250 pounds, around 22 years old, a 6.25-inch wingspan on the season, had numbers of about 19 points per game, 11 boards, 3 assists, over 2 blocks, almost a steal, shooting splits of 51, 28, and 59. Did not foul very often for how defensive talented he is, and didn't turn the ball over a lot for how much usage he had. Broome is one of these older guys, and he isn't particularly huge compared to some of the other big men in this class. So what makes you kind of confident in his abilities translating into the NBA?
I just think this is like the laziest analysis, but I just think he knows how to play. Like I just think, again, we talked about backup level bigs that can just jump in and play for you are so huge. And I think there's any number of teams you could throw him on the floor and he'd be fine. Like he's going to step in and do really, really well. I love the way he processes the game. And if you give me a big man that can see passes that a lot of other bigs don't see, or they come much later, I'll take it, right? Because you can then do more stuff with them. I thought this year what was kind of fun was he started to really run some fake DHOs and stuff a little bit, especially when Tahad Pettiford was in the game and you had to jump him coming around. Then it'd be, all right, I'm going to run I call it like the QB keeper, right? I'm going to keep it. Then he gets downhill, only to his left hand, or spin back to his left hand. He's never, ever going to take that shot with his right hand, but that's okay. At least with the lefty, you catch everybody the first time in a game. It's always like your first free hoop. Even if you're playing pickup, it's like, oh crap, that guy's the lefty, right? Like
we love lefties. Yes.
Yeah. And I've got a couple lefties this year too on my list. But I think defensively, I think he moves his feet better than he got credit for. And I think his positioning is pretty good with that. And then I think he's pretty rugged inside. I think he holds up. He gets a lot of block shots on his own guy, which is always to me a sense of good timing, good reading of a player. It's my 5'9" self is going to say this. It's easy to block shots as the help defender. But like, those are great too, but I like when you can block your own man's shot, because that tells me you're right there, you're right on it, and you read it. I think he's just such a smart player, and I think that's where some of that is age, but I think some of that is just his natural basketball IQ. Because he popped for me a couple years ago when I was watching the game, and I was like, I kind of like this kid. The one real bummer was he didn't shoot it good this year. I wanted to see him come out and knock down like 36, 37% from three, which where it looked like he was trending. So that's a little worrisome. And then the free throw percentage went back south. So I'm a little more nervous about that. I was pumping him as going into the process. I was like, this guy could sneak into the late lottery if teams aren't scared off by his age and all that. And now I'm a little more like, all right, I'd still probably pick him late first round. But I think he's maybe as a second rounder, but he might be like one of those priority second rounders where it's like, I'm going to trade up to go get him because I've got extra picks. He can jump right into my rotation. Let's go.
Yeah, I still got Broome in the first. I'm with you.
Yeah,
I was really into him to start the year, and like I feel like in the consensus boards, he's still like in the second a lot of the times, and I'm like, I can't quit the guy. Like to your point, like he's just so productive. He always rebounds. I think he's an unbelievably underrated passer. It is exceptionally rare for big guys.
And I apologize. I'm going to keep.
Oh, you're good. No,
do your thing.
Do it.
I don't mind too, especially from bigs when they get some turnovers and they're like turnovers of commission where it's like he's trying to make something happen. And there are times he's throwing passes and like the guys on Auburn were just like, I didn't even know you were throwing it. I was cutting through I was literally just cutting through on the baseline and didn't realize I was wide open. I wasn't ready. Like that's where like, and I try not to pick on Abel. He's not even a kid. He might be closer to my age, but like Chad Baker Mazzara, like, dude, when you cut baseline, would you look for the ball like instead of just being zoned in on?
He was the name in my head when you were saying like the not expecting.
Multiple times. Like if you watch Johni, like if you just pulled up all of his turnovers, you're going to find multiple ones where he threw it into the first row, being a cheerleader because the guy just wasn't ready for the pass. And it goes down as his turnover, but it really wasn't what happened. So sorry, I interrupted you, Max.
No,
those are the kind of passing turnovers I don't mind seeing because it's like, all right, in the NBA, that's probably a basket, or you passed a guy and you get fouled, or you got him into the next action and he found a shoot, whatever it is.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is like for a guy who had like the usage that he did at Auburn, I thought he took great care of the ball for a big guy. Like generally speaking, like there's times where he still gets a little fancy with it, but I don't know. Like I feel like the big knock on Broome, and I'm curious to get your take on it, is that there is no clean comp for him. It feels like I think he's one of those guys where like he's not quite as big as some of these other guys, so he's not quite the shooter as some of these other guys, like whatever. Like, how do you approach players like that? Especially
I have one
being
for
so
you
deep
that
because I have one that I like, but I'm curious to hear yours.
I think he's a little Isaiah Hartensteinish.
Okay,
ooh, I like that.
That's cheap because they're both lefties, right? So like but he plays a little bit bigger than his size is. I think Hartenstein is we got to go back to right a couple years ago. Hartenstein has like filled out to become like a pretty big monster now, right? Like nobody's moving that guy. I think Broome has the frame where he can put on some weight and muscle and become.
He's cut back a lot of weight.
Yeah, he was like bulky and then he got kind of thin and now I think he's like filling back out.
Yeah, unlike myself, he has room to add good weight, right? Like that's where let's say he adds a little bit more. But you're right. Like he there was if you go back and look at him his first couple years at Auburn, a little doughy, right? A little more there. But I think you could see him bulk up appropriately and become like, all right, you're just not moving him. Like college guys couldn't really move him anyway. Like NBA guys, I don't know if they're going to move him. He just has that nice soft touch in the paint. He can see those passes. He gets into whatever it is very quickly, even though he himself does not move all that fast. And then that's a lot of what Hartenstein does, right? Like I'm going to get into it. And then the rebounding, right? What I like with a rebounder, especially guys not like super duper athletic, is do they go up and attack the ball? Like go up and attack the ball. They get it. They snatch it. And then they're off to whatever, they're doing next with it. That gets me really excited when a guy can do that. Like there's why I still believe there's a place for Oscar Tshiebwe in the NBA simply because of the way he rebounds. Like he is such a ridiculous rebounder with the way he attacks the ball when it's in the air. And it's just go up and get it. It's these quick actions to get it. And Broome has a little bit of that in his game too. I mean, this guy's been right around double-digit rebounds all 5 years he was in college, including his first couple years at Moorhead State, I believe.
Moorhead,
He started, like he was right around there. He then did. That's the other thing that I liked too was, all right, productive at a lower level, but translated into being just as productive at Auburn. Like that says to me like he's somebody who can level up too. So that's that's why I'm a big fan.
Yeah. So one more. Oh, I'm sorry, Maxwell. I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm just gonna go ahead and talk. Sorry. I want to ask you, Keith, because in the Auburn setting, we've seen him play alongside another big with a Dylan Cardwell, right? And actually, a lot of my favorite passes come from their two-man high-low actions that they would run in Auburn. Yeah. But we've seen him be featured as like the centerpiece at a smaller level at Moorhead. Do you think that we could see him thrive in the NBA in kind of a two-man group, or do you see him more so being like a single big in the rotations he's featured in?
The passing tells me we can see him play with another big, but that other big either needs to be a pretty good shooter or Broome's going to have to develop as a shooter. Like that, again, not to repeat myself, but like that was the bummer about his super senior year was like it just didn't like come the way I wanted it to when it looked like his fourth year. It looked like, all right, the shot's coming around now. Now we're going to be there with him as a shooter. The fact that it didn't get there, that part has me a little worried. You just can't put two non-shooting bigs on the floor together. It just wrecks your offense. But if him or the other big can shoot, that's pretty good. And then I think he'll be good as a single big against backup groups. Because I do think what teams still look for a lot of times with those backup bigs is when things are all getting a little weird, can we at least throw it to them on the roll or the occasional post up, which is like a relic in the NBA, but like, can we throw it to them and they can create something? And he's really good at getting himself fouled. Like he draws fouls fairly well because he is now I'm mixing baseball terms in here, but he's the crafty lefty, right? Like he just does a good job getting himself fouled. So I think single big probably more against backup units. I don't know that he's ever going to be like the anchor big that holds it down by himself. And then the fact that he came in touch smaller, maybe I think that says too, maybe there's a little bit of forward in his future if because I do think he can hold up a little bit.
For sure. I think so too. We are going to throw it to a quick break and we're going to be back with 3 more of Keith's guys and we're going to really start to get into Sicko territory. So stick with us.
Yeah.
All right, back from the break. We are going to start off with a guy who I've kind of come back around on. He was a guy I felt like I never quite thought, and then like consensus started to fade on him, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I actually kind of like this guy. That is Kam Jones, a guard out of Marquette. Came in at the NBA in a quarter inch with a 6'6" wingspan. He is 23 years old, 202 pounds. Did a lot for the Golden Eagles this year. 19.2 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists to only 1.9 turnovers, 1.4 steals, 0.3 blocks. He shot 48.3% from the field, 31.1% from three, and 64.8% from the free throw line. Those numbers might be a little bit deceiving. He really shot the ball from deep in past years. He had a massive usage burden this year. I believe may have had some injury stuff as well. He's shown that he can play a supporting role on a high major team. He's played a leading role on a high major team. What makes Kam Jones one of your guys?
Yeah, the fact that he can kind of do a little bit of everything is so huge, especially where you're talking about a kid who's going to have to find his way onto the floor in the NBA. He's not a great shooter. He's not amazing. He's a good defender, but not an amazing defensive player. His size isn't overwhelming. But the fact that he just, again, knows how to, you're going to see that's like a thing for me. If you know how to play, that just jumps you way up my board. He clearly knows how to play. He is just really good at doing whatever was asked. I think his first few years at Marquette, I was like, all right, looks like this guy might be a 3-and-D guy. Like, I don't know what he'll really do. His third year, junior year, I can't remember. Was he a super senior? No, he was a true senior. So like his third year at Marquette started to do a little bit more with the ball in his hands. And it was like, okay, maybe there's a little bit more here. And I wrote down a note that said, check in on him next year. when he didn't go to the draft, because I was like, I want to see like what does that translate to. And then Marquette wasn't like a super deep team, so then it was all right. They need him to. And I remember reading a preseason article where it's like Kam Jones is going to be the lead ball handler. You know how he goes is how Marquette will go, and he was awesome. Like in that role, like you mentioned, the number of assists to turnovers. That's high level, like point guard type numbers there.
3.2 ATO. Yeah.
Yeah, that's big time. The shot, I'm not as nervous about it because we have 3 full years of pretty good shooting under his belt. I think there was so much self-created stuff. He got thrown a ton of grenades in that offense because they just didn't have anybody else. And it was the number of times like I saw him having to take a leaning off the dribble 34-footer because the shot clock was running out was just tough. But yeah, I think he's, again, can defend, so that'll get him on the floor probably initially, but he can do so many things that I think that's going to really help. And I do think the shot's going to come back around, where I think that's what the other stuff will get him in the lineup, and then I think that'll help keep him there.
So one question I want to ask you just regarding Cam before we move on, Keith, is like he measured 6'3¼ without shoes. So in shoes, he's going to be nearing 6'5", which is huge for him, right? Because that gives him some positional versatility. Mm-hmm. Do you think I think he's talented enough to come in right away and just be kind of like a microwave kind of combo guard off of the bench? Do you think that's his ideal role coming in?
Yeah. Yes-ish. I don't know that he's going to come in and like fill it up scoring wise like that, but I think he's somebody that he'll be a rotation player right away. What's going to happen, I'm guessing, if he lands in the right spot is I don't want him to go somewhere where they have 100 other guards and wings, because it's like it's going to be hard for him, I think, to push past a lot of guys. But if he goes somewhere he can get on the floor pretty quickly, what I'll be excited to see is I think then that's how like people are going to be like, wow, this guy's actually pretty good. And you'll start getting those preseason stories about, whoever, Team X is really happy with Kam Jones and all that. I've got him as a late first rounder on my board. I think he should go in the first round. Again, start looking at those teams at the back end of the first round. Some of those teams might be like, what we need is a cost control guy who could come in and give us minutes. Kind of a little bit. Baylor Shireman didn't get there until late in his rookie year, but it looks like he's probably going to take on a much bigger role here in year 2. I think that could be kind of where Kam Jones is, where it's like, yeah, year 1 he gets a role, he's playing a lot, and then moves right in year 2. He's a locked in rotation guy. Talked about Quentin Grimes earlier. I think there's a little bit of Quentin Grimes in there where he can just do a lot of stuff, right? I don't know if it'll ever be quite Quentin Grimes scoring last year. I can't wait to see, like, is that real? Like
yeah, I hope so.
Where did that come from, right?
It's really cool, yeah.
Yeah, like, and especially the on-ball juice, like, that's a little, I don't know, but like, yeah, if we're talking about Kam Jones that way, like that could be where we land.
Yeah, I think he just had such an interesting year going from like pure off ball to pure on ball in a way that I don't think we've really seen many times before. Let's move over to Koby Sanders, who is a very, very fun late riser out of Nevada. He was a guy who played at Cal Poly, flew way under the radar there, goes over to Nevada, 6'7", 6'8¼ wingspan, shooting guard, I guess. Like
perimeter player.
I was gonna say one of the guys that I've had the most like, what position is this conversation about with people in front offices. He averaged 15.8 points, 3.9 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game, 1.1 steal, and 0.3 blocks. 46% from the field, 34.2% from three, 79.5% from the free throw line. Had himself a fantastic Portsmouth Invitational, got to cut the line and go right to the NBA Combine from Portsmouth. He pulled the Tumani Kamara, not even having to make the elite camp stopover. They just said, all right, you're one of the big boys now, come on over. I guess before we even get into it, for people who haven't seen Koby Sanders before, Keith, what is this man? What is this?
He's like a positional tomato, right? Like, is he a vegetable? Is he a fruit? Like, what is he?
Yeah, I don't know. He's a basketball player. Right. Like he's gonna play. Like, and I just think he's pretty good. There's a little bit of Jalen Williams in there, where there's a little just the size, the ability to do stuff with the ball in his hands. So I got turned on to him in his last year at Cal Poly. A friend of mine who's an area scout out that way was like, "Hey, you should check this kid out. He's going to transfer to a bigger school next year." And then when it did, and I was like, "All right, let me see." And I was like, "Yeah, this guy's kind of interesting, but it's Cal Poly. It's not the best, schedule and all that stuff." Then you see him go to Nevada, much bigger school, a lot more competition, better schedule. And I was like, "All right, this kid, it's like can play. He just again knows how to play, knows what he's doing."
Mm-hmm.
But I like that. I like that he is okay. Now I've beat you with my quickness, so you put a small on me. Just taking him right. I'm just gonna bully him. I'm just gonna get what I want on the floor. I'm gonna overpower him, and I'm either gonna score. I'm gonna make a play for somebody else. I don't know if he's a guard or a forward or he's probably more of a true wing. I really don't know, but yeah, just really to watch him. And what really jumped out to me was he had a couple games where against the better teams, so I think it was their second game with Colorado State. He was stunk. It was really bad and had a terrible game. Then in the conference tournament, he came back. He didn't shoot well from the field, but a lot of that was Nevada was like, "You're all we got," against Nick Clifford and a pretty good Colorado State team. And he was there, right? And he was super competitive with Nick Clifford, who, by the way, I also love and should be a first-round pick.
Thank you.
I just like when you see a kid step up to the moment and say, "All right, I'm going to go. I got this." And there's just a lot to like. Again, doesn't really shoot it all that great. We'll see. Free throw shooting's pretty good, though. So that has me at least encouraging. Shot doesn't look broken by any means. I think it's pretty clean. So we'll see. Didn't get a lot of catch and shoot attempts at either Nevada or Cal Poly. So I'm curious to see what does that look like when others make the game a little bit easier for him. But yeah, I'm really excited for him.
Yeah, and to your point about the shot, I thought the catch and shoot at least got out of his hands quickly.
Yes.
It's not like all right, I caught it. Time to let's really aim this sucker. It's a very normal looking shot in a good way. It has a degree of functionality to it. The one thing I was really concerned on with him was his defense, because it just felt like he was one of those guys where it's like, I'm doing a lot on offense. I'm going to kind of take it easy over here, but I've got long arms and I can move a little bit, so it's fine. But I thought at Portsmouth, man, I don't know who handled his pre-draft or whatever, but that guy was moving out there. He looked really good there defensively.
Yeah, that felt like to me somebody said, "Hey, you better chill out on defense, otherwise you're going to be a late second round G League kind of guy. You might have to play your way onto a team through summer league kind of thing." But yeah, the fact that he showed up so big on defense in the pre-draft stuff was huge.
Absolutely. Last guy we're going to touch on is another guy that I'm just sort of slowly talking myself into.
You don't got to worry about him as a shooter either.
No.
Yeah. This guy for sure. Koby Brea out of Kentucky, started off at Dayton, 6'5" and a quarter. Was wingspan was right in that same range, which is really common among elite shooters. 11.6 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, 1.3 assists to 0.5 turnovers. Always been a really steady decision maker. 47% from the field, 43.5% from three on high volume. Has been consistently over 40% from three on high volume with absurd range, movement ability, pull-up game, all that, and 91.4% at the free throw line, in case you like that as an indicator too. Koby Brea, I think it's pretty clear what the sell is, but you just got to put people over the top on what has you stronger in your convictions about Brea rather than some of the other guys who have the shooter reputation?
Elite shooter and really good size for a shooter. This is not someone coming in who measured right. We all know how they play games. It's, he's 6'6", and then they measure and he's 6'3", and it's oh crap. Right.
Never trust a 6 foot listing either.
No, 6'3" is the most devious height listing.
Right. Yeah.
There's always something wrong with that one.
6'3" also feels like the one where it's people have a hard time getting their head around 6'6" is tall, right? That guy is tall. 6'3" is probably work with a 6'3" guy, and then it's find out, oh, they're 6 foot, whatever. But he's legit. His size is legit, and I think that's so important because you combine that with a pretty quick release and deep range. I don't have any worries about him getting the shot off in the NBA. Yeah, if you're super tight in his pocket, I don't know that he's going to be able to shake guys off the dribble. He didn't do a lot of that. But I think this is a guy where you'll see him come in, and this is, I'm going to use a Celtics comp. Like Sam Hauser is in the NBA because he's a great designated shooter. Brea's a little bit smaller than Hauser, and Hauser has proven to hold up really well.
Absolutely.
But if Brea can hold up defensively, the shooting's going to get him on the floor because he might be the best pure shooter in the class. Like it's way up there. We're not going to talk about him, but like I love DeMario Monsanto shooting. Like just has me over the moon for because he played with nobody. Like Brea played at Kentucky where at least guys were getting the ball and setting him up. But I love the deep range. I love the fact that these are not college threes. He's hitting NBA threes with regularity. I think the decision making got better as the year went along too, especially as teams closed out harder. Because he kind of came in initially, didn't play a ton. Like he was like a 20-minute per game guy early in the year, and then got more minutes. Kentucky also had some injuries down the stretch of the season too. But I thought like his ability to do a little something with the ball in his hands, at least make the next pass, make the next read, not necessarily drive a closeout, but get past the closeout for the pull up. Like those were big, like all that sort of stuff. Reads to me like, all right, he's reading the game pretty well. He's going to really make some plays here for four teams. And yeah, but it's the shooting. Like that's the easiest thing that I can say.
So what would you assess his range to be, kind of like knowing what you know about the league? Where would you think like realistically he could fall in the draft?
Yeah, let me pull up where I have him. So I have him like a mid-second rounder.
Okay.
He could be 1-2. We talked about it a little bit too, right? Where some of these guys may not necessarily be automatically ticketed for a two-way. If it's that guy fills a need for us, it might be go. But he's somebody I could see starting on a two-way contract. And then we get through like the early part of the G League season. And it's like, holy crap, this guy's shooting 45% and averaging, 20 a game, most of it on 3-pointers in the G League. And the next thing you know, he's on a standard deal and brought up. So that's where I've got him. But he is steadily, not even steadily, like rocketed midway through the year up to now where it's like there's still a little steady climb the more I talk to teams about him and realize like, all right, there's some real interest. I'm trying very, very hard this year to not let intel stuff influence my own personal rankings too much because I did too much of that last year. That was a big learning because I came out and said, like, I was 100 and I'm still 100% convinced Oso Iguodala should have been a first round pick because he's like my favorite player in the league and I love him. But I let people influence me too much where it's like, all right, he's not going to get picked in the first round. And then I moved him down on my board. And now I'm trying to hold a little more firm. So I'm battling that with Brea because I'm also trying to constantly, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe I'm just the one who's not right here and I'm missing something. So I'm trying not to overreact too much because I am starting to hear some teams like he's going to be an early second rounder. And I think workouts are going to be huge for him too. And I've heard, workouts are already going fairly well. So yeah, I'm fairly certain he's going to be there. A couple people in the chat saying your guy also.
How do you feel about Brea defensively? Because that was my thing with him for a long time. Was I felt like it was always like a hair more lackadaisical than I wanted it to be. Like it wasn't even a proficiency thing so much as it's like, were you even like trying to stay balanced on that closeout? Like, why weren't you hustling harder at that spot? Like, I just don't know how to balance that. I don't know. Like, he's just a tricky evaluation because he's such a smart player at the same time that it's like, I don't want to like fade a guy who like makes every shot and has feel.
Could he be like an Isaiah Joe type though? I guess is like my question.
With a little more size. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. Not a, that's my worry is there just wasn't always a lot of defensive activity. Like it kind of felt like, all right, I made the first effort, but I'm not going to make the second effort necessarily. I felt like Kentucky got super messy too as the year went along, with a lot of their stuff. And I think some of that was guys being out of the lineup and things that happened there. It felt like there were just some guys too that weren't you could tell they were just finishing their run there.
And the Butler injury kind of hurt him too, Lamar.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? I even think Jackson Robinson being out was tough on them too, because I thought he was he's somebody I'm still a little higher on, I think, than most people. I don't know where he lands ultimately now, but hey, I think that part got a little weird. I also wonder if Brea bought into my role is to come off the bench and gun shots. And I'm going to come off the bench and gun shots. That's what they want me to do here. That's why I'm at Kentucky. That's why I came here from Dayton. And I think sometimes when guys buy into that, it gets a little they're not going to do really anything. He got the single greatest basketball player name ever, Max Hooper. If you remember him.
Max Hooper. Yeah. He played the Jack Golke role.
Yeah.
It's every year they have a guy who plays that role.
Extreme, right?
Yes.
I think he took something 10 total 2-point shots.
Yeah, it was absurd
in his entire career. And it's but he didn't do anything else because it was my whole job is to come out here and shoot 1 million 3-pointers. You're not going to get away with that in the SEC. So Koby Brea wasn't quite to that level, but it did feel like there was a lot of my job's to shoot. That's what I do. There's not much else. So I don't know. But if he can't hold up, it's going to be hard for him to be anything than just a designated shooter at the end of the bench. But there's enough athleticism there. I think he will figure it out.
That's fair. So Keith, we don't have this on the list, but one thing I want to ask, I've been wanting to ask every guest that we've had. It could just be a quick thought, but what are your thoughts and feelings about Cooper Flagg, who's probably the most disrespected player in this class because he's all right, he's great. Let's move on and not talk about him anymore. You know what I mean? So what's your Cooper Flagg thoughts?
So being a kid from New England myself and him, obviously, I had people telling me, you got to see this kid at, this random high school in Maine. This kid's going to be awesome. And you guys know, if I had $1 for every kid, especially some kid. So I actually happened to be home, and then I went to visit a friend who lived close enough by where I was all right, I'm going to go check him out. And I literally walked into the gym being this kid that everybody saw me as a monster is going to turn out to be 6 foot tall, and he's okay, but he's dunking on a bunch of 5'8" centers because it's Maine high school basketball. And I grew up playing high school basketball in Massachusetts, which is a notch above, especially where I played. And I can't, and I was oh my God. I'm this kid is the real deal. I was blown away. Then when I found out he was transferring to Montverde, I was well, I'm going to be at all the games I can be at to watch how this develops. Here's the single biggest thing I can say to anybody about Cooper Flagg. When everybody comes away with holy crap, is he good? I remind them he should have just graduated high school a week ago. That it just puts it all in perspective of how wild this is. I don't want to go crazy, but I don't like the number of people well, he's not Wembanyama, he's not Zion, he's not Anthony Davis. He's a better offensive player already than Anthony Davis was at the college level. He's about 1,000 levels better than Zion was defensively at the collegiate level. And Wembanyama is a whole other form of creature that I don't even know.
Freak of nature.
Yeah, I don't even know what we're working with there. Still not fully sure. We're not going to find out he wasn't an alien sent here from another planet. So I'm take Wemby out. That's a whole other thing. Cooper is right there with those other guys for recent can't miss prospects. For me, I am beyond excited. I think he's going to plug right in with Dallas. He's going to be their starting small forward, which I think is going to be a little messy at times because I think they're going to put the ball in his hands maybe a little too much, especially with Kyrie out. But I think long-term that's going to be great for him. I don't want Mavs fans to be we're trying to win the title this year with him. You got to give it a little bit of time, and some messiness early will probably pay off big time. I always think about Devin Booker. The Suns gave Devin Booker 1 million on-ball reps when he was a young player, and boy, they sucked. turned it over, dribbled off his foot, threw passes to no one, like really bad shots. Yeah, it was just a mess. And then, so you got to give it time, but I think he's going to slot in. I think defensively, he's going to be a playmaker day one. I couldn't be higher on this kid. I've obviously seen him play a million times. Yeah, I'm really fired up for him.
Well, we're so glad that we got to have you on and talk draft with you. It's a pleasure. If you are not already following along with the front office show, I don't know what you're doing. Get your life.
Shame on you.
But yeah, keep look out for Keith. Sports Business Classroom, tremendous resource. Keith, you just want to quickly just run through all the different things that you do and where people can find you?
Sure, yeah. You can find a lot of my written work at Spotrac.com. If you're an NBA person and you like the roster stuff and the how much cap space the teams have, what are they working with?
It's a go-to for me. Yeah, personally.
You got to be on. I say this I'm trying to be humble, but I say this with full confidence. We have the best publicly available salary information for the NBA anywhere. So just, check that out. I think our trade machine is the best one. If you're really somebody who likes to play with fake trades and the like, we have,
if I may,
yeah,
if I can cut you off, Keith, just to return the favor here. I used to use, and I'll leave the name out. I used to use another pretty popular website for like the cap stuff, especially, for draft. And we're talking about like focuses for like lottery previews and stuff like that. I switched over to you guys, and I never looked back. It's a fantastic resource.
Yeah, and we're always adding stuff where people ask for like, it'd be really cool if we could see this, and a lot of times it's already there. So just ask, and we can point you in the right direction. But yeah, it's we have a mock draft machine too, if people want to use that. There's nothing to it beyond just there. But we added trade functionality. It's as simple as you assign the pick to a different team. So you don't think it's anything more involved than that. But people are like, well, I think this team could trade up. Well, yeah, you could do that now. You sign it somewhere and you can save it. You can take a picture with all that stuff. So we're constantly adding tools over there. I'm in the middle of off-season previews. I'm over there right now where I am doing team previews. Free agent previews are up. 4 or 5 positions are up. It's not a great free agent class, spoiler alert, but I write about all of them. I have there's 205 potential free agents. I have a blurb up. We're ready to go for everybody. Centers will come last, but I have a blurb up for all the guys who are already up, the 150 or so that are already up there. Then NBA Front Office Show, as you said, that's our podcast. Trevor Lane and I, we're right now about 3-4 times a week. It sounds a little weird, but as we get into closer into the draft and free agency, we'll go back to 5 times a week. So as everybody else is cutting back, we're picking up because that's what we do. We cover all the other stuff. So it's but yeah, we also have a lot of fun over there. We try to keep it light. We try to be informative, but it's basketball. It should be fun.
Very fun show.
Yeah.
Front Office Fridays are my best. I love when you belt out Front Office Friday to kick it off.
Yeah, and that started as just me scaring Trevor one time when we did it a couple years ago, and people loved it. So now we do it still all the time. So we just have an absolute blast with that stuff. So but yeah, man, it's just a lot of fun. Like we're trying to have a lot of fun with all this stuff, and that's but those are the places you find me. And then Maxwell, you mentioned Sports Business Classroom. I'm going to be an instructor out there in Las Vegas this year. Super excited.
Congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be a blast. My background before I did basketball, I worked at Disney for 20 years. But a big part of my work at Disney and my background before there was all in education. I was going to be a teacher and a coach because I couldn't play, so I was going to be a coach. And I love when I can do the educational stuff. So it's going to be awesome to be out there with a bunch of people. And quite frankly, like I said, these are people who are like, you're like a rock star in the cap world, and of course, I have an ego, so that makes me feel really good. But yeah, I'm really excited for that. We're down to it on spots. So, if you're interested, check it out, sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Not a guarantee you'll get a job in the world of basketball, but it will open doors for you that you're not going to get opened otherwise if you come in and do the work and put in the effort and all that. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun time. Plus, you get to hang out with me for a week. So, who wouldn't want that?
For sure. So make sure you're checking Keith out everywhere he's at. Make sure you buy the No Strings NBA draft guide. It's on nostringsnba.com. It is out. Our team, I'm not just saying this because I would put our team on blast if they did a poor job. I don't think I'm above that. I think I would say that they blew it. But I couldn't be more proud to be a part of this team. We had people that went so above and beyond on this thing. It's like 336 pages or something like that. We covered 100 players. There is proprietary data from Synergy that's available in there. There are full scouting reports, strengths and weaknesses, player comps, whatever you want to get prepared for the draft.
Heath tweeted about it too. If you don't want to listen to us, like Heath even said that it was really, really cool.
Yeah. So here's the best thing I can say for it. The information is awesome, but the way y'all presented it is even better. Like this is not just thousands of words on a page for you to just read. Like you guys, I love the way I apologize if I'm giving a little spoiler away, but I love the sell me this pen idea on here's our elevator pitch on this prospect. Like so cool the way you guys did that. I said it's splashy. Like it feels like it should be in print in a magazine, because it's just fun. And that's again, this stuff should be fun. And if you can combine fun and informational, you guys knocked it out of the park. So well done. I'm gonna have it, handy everywhere I go for the next 3-ish weeks until we're draft and even post draft as we get into summer league and we're trying to talk about these guys.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. Check out NoCelingsNBA.com. We've got daily written work there every single day. Steven, I believe you're doing VJ Edgecombe this week. Is that right?
Yep. Got VJ Edgecombe, and we're doing lottery preview pieces. Mine and Rucker, I think, kick off Monday, where we start with who did we start with? I think it was the Rockets. Yeah, we're kicking off with the Rockets Monday. So excited about that.
Lottery preview. So if you're interested in a team that's picking the lottery, we'll break down potential options at their spot, who we like there. I'm going to have a piece Monday on Drake Powell, who's a really interesting kind of fringe, late first round, early second round name. So that's where we're at. So make sure you are following No Ceilings NBA. Make sure you're following at Keith Smith NBA, at Stephen G Hoops, and at Boundboards. That's where you can find us. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you have a great night.
Much love, y'all.